Welcome, everybody, back to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I'm your host, Jason Verlinde, the publisher of the Fretboard Journal magazine, and I am so pleased to tell you that our 59th issue is going to mail in just about 2 weeks, so consider this your absolute deadline to subscribe if you want to reserve your copy of the brand new issue. As always, our magazine clocks in at 128 pages. It's printed on keepsake paper, and it is filled with in-depth interviews and long-form journalism and profiles on guitar makers and artists that we truly, truly love. We strive to make something that is both eclectic and informative, and we would love to share this new issue with you all. So go to fretboardjournal.com, click on the subscribe button, and you can join us. I've had a few folks email me recently who were subscribers and didn't realize they had let their subscription lapse. So if you are one of those people, just click on that subscribe button. We can get you back in the system and get you this brand new issue. I would love for you to be a part of the magazine. Speaking of a part of the magazine, on this very podcast, every Friday, I talk to somebody interesting from the world of guitars. The weekly nature of this show allows me to interview people who have a new record coming out and kind of time it around the album or maybe a new product or maybe just a story that I am dying to hear. And I got to be honest with you, I knew of today's guest, Rhys from Bigfoot Engineering, the pedal company in the UK, a tiny bit, but I had no idea about his background. I had no idea that there was a Fretboard Journal connection with his new album that is coming out, and I just absolutely love talking to Rhys. So Rhys, I am so grateful that we had this conversation. If you don't know, Rhys is the guy behind Bigfoot Engineering in the UK. He makes pedals with funny names, King Fuzz, Yak Face, Octopus Prime, that are critically acclaimed. People love Bigfoot Engineering pedals. Rhys, though, also has this quieter side. He is an acoustic guitarist, and he has just put out, as of today, it is out on all the streaming platforms, an album called Zems. This is a very, very introspective, beautifully recorded acoustic guitar record. Sort of reminds me of almost those like spacious classic ECM records. The playing, the compositions are just truly breathtaking. And Rhys explains the story of the album, the Fretboard Journal connection that I, again, was not prepared for, and some of the thought that went into these compositions. And it's truly a great chat. I can't wait for you to all hear it. As always, if you love the podcast, reach out to me, podcast@fretboardjournal.com. That is how you can get a hold of me. And a few plugs before I share this interview. Of course, our Fretboard Summit is taking place August 20th to 22nd, 2026 in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music. Please register as soon as you can. It will sell out. I'd hate for anyone to be left out. With your 3-day registration, with your pass, you get access to all the concerts, including some truly big names we haven't announced yet. You get access to the entire Lutherie showcase, as well as all of the master classes, workshops, networking events, and fun that we have. Everybody who comes to the Fretboard Summit wants to come back. It is one of those events you just want to be able to attend year after year. And we put our heart and soul into it. So I would love for you to be there. Again, go to fretboardsummit.org if you want to register. We are brought to you today by Peghead Nation, one of my favorite places on the internet, an incredible guitar, mandolin, and banjo instruction portal where you can be a better player at your own pace with instructors, many of whom have been featured on this podcast or in our magazine. Use the discount code FRETBOARD when you check out. You can get your first month free at Peghead Nation. We are also brought to you by Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar, which happens to be sitting about, 3 miles from where I am here in Seattle, Washington. Mike and Mike's has this sprawling, multi-floored guitar store with acoustics, electric synths, keyboards, you name it, pedals, all the stuff. And they also have one of the Pacific Northwest's best repair and restoration shops. So go to mmguitarbar.com, tell them the Fretboard Journal sent you. If you're not into buying anything right now, go check out their Substack, which is filled with information and great stories. And those are my big announcements. We just posted a new Luthier on Luthier podcast. Everybody go check that out. Michael Bashkin interviewed Otto D'Ambrosio Otto is one of the great archtop designers and builders, and he also works for Eastman Instruments. So they talk a lot about having his feet in both camps, the mass market guitars as well as the one-at-a-time guitars. I don't have much else to add aside from the fact that we have a whole bunch of great podcasts coming up. So if you haven't subscribed to this yet, go on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast and subscribe so you can get all the ones sent directly to your feed without having to check social media. And right now, I'm going to share with you this conversation I had with Rhys John Stubbs from Bigfoot Engineering. I hope you enjoy this chat about Bigfoot, about his new record, and so much more. Welcome to the Fretboard Journal podcast, first off.
Thank you.
I've been following Bigfoot Engineering for a while. I've been seeing the pedals that you've created, and then out of the blue, I get a link to an album that is sort of the last thing I would expect from the builder of effects pedals to create, which is this like beautifully sensitive, contemplative acoustic guitar record. And so I dove into that. That was fascinating. And then I'm reading about the songs that are on the album, and there's a whole arc there to your life and everything. So I think to make this long-winded intro a little shorter, we just need to hear your whole story. Rhys, where are you from? Let's start there. And when did the guitar enter your life?
I'm from just outside London. I grew up there, and guitar at our school, we had 3 guys come in and do an assembly. I can't remember exactly how it came to be, but one of them was flamenco, one of them was folk, and one of them was like rock. And at the end of the assembly, they said, "Do you want to take lessons with us?" And I was one of the guys who jumped at it. And I ended up taking lessons with the rock guy and stuck with him until I was, I think, 17. So all the way up until university, and then I went and studied guitar. So it was pretty instant.
And at what point did the acoustic guitar enter your life? Because this album is, I mean, it's all acoustic.
Yes, it was much, much later. I think it started, or certainly one of the biggest catalysts was the Milk Carton Kids, who I discovered through a video you put up with them actually years ago on YouTube.
The one where that's kind of cringy.
Yeah. I mean, I personally love the humor, but yeah, I know what you mean. Some people would find it awkward, maybe.
It seemed like their shtick of hating each other almost went to the extreme. And I have talked to them about that video, but obviously they've been in the magazine and on the podcast numerous times since. Amazing, though, that was it. So you hear them doing these beautiful folk songs, and then you go out and get an acoustic guitar or a nice one?
I've been playing acoustic on and off a bit, but only really to write songs that would then translate to playing in a rock band. You know, strumming chords, singing, and getting some initial lyrics. But I think Kenneth's playing in particular, the way time becomes elastic, and the way all the stuff I'd learned at uni, especially about voice leading, counterpoint, harmony, he was almost, I don't want to say drifting because that sounds like a negative word, but he was like floating through chord changes. And I thought his playing alone was so beautiful that I could listen to an album of just that. And it really started, the kind of the gears started to line up. And especially after I had my accident, which you would have read a little bit about on the bio, I could only play one note at a time. And so I found this kind of arpeggiating style, which was very similar to how Kenneth was playing. It just lent itself more to acoustic than to electric, because you need so much clarity, I think, to make that work. And you almost have to embrace the overtones. I don't think it works if you're trying to constantly mute them, or, especially if you're using a particularly overdriven tone. It is so sensitive what you're trying to play that I just ended up gravitating more and more through later years to acoustic in that way.
And when for folks who don't know your hand accident, what happened and what was the effect of all that?
I think it was 7 years ago now. I was basically sharpening a pair of hedge trimmers, which are like the big shears, like I could probably 14, 16-inch long blade. And I had one of the blades in a vise and I was grinding it with a file. And so I had my weight down on it and I slipped off the file and landed slap on the, what was by then quite a sharp blade. And I knew instantly, I grabbed my thumb and it was like someone had switched it off. Just nothing, no movement, no feeling. And yeah, I'd severed the nerve and tendon. I was misdiagnosed, unfortunately, at hospital. So it was over a week and a half maybe before I then was diagnosed and then rushed to have an operation on it. But by then it was, it's kind of interesting in a bit of a gruesome way, but the bit, I basically cut my thumb around about here and the end dies, it turns to scar tissue.
This is your fretting hands?
This is I'm right-handed, so my left fretting hand. But the bit that's still connected to your nervous system starts growing thousands of new little shoots, but it doesn't also grow the protective insulation around them. So they're all raw, and it starts to fill your thumb trying to find the other end of it, and it's called a neuroma, this kind of ball of raw nerve endings. And so by the time they remove all of that, it's then very difficult to rejoin it, especially to a nerve which is largely died by this point. So, yeah, I don't have much feeling. There's a couple of spots here and there where I can sense something, and I don't have much movement. And it kind of feels a bit like there's a weight hanging off my hand, almost like a lump of clay. Like I can feel in my hand that there's something there, but it's largely in the way now, to be honest.
Does it get cold or hot? Like, do you feel anything?
I don't feel anything, but in the cold weather, it aches. The whole that side of my hand it gets a lot worse.
Wow. At what point did Bigfoot Engineering launch?
That was after university. I studied guitar, and it left me feeling unfulfilled, if I'm honest. So I was looking more into electronics, which I'd been doing for years anyway. And my uncle studied electronic engineering and then used it to go into music. And he was building consoles for a company here called Soundtech. And I always thought his professional life had been so interesting that I thought, I might try and replicate that. So I was looking at studying electronics, and I got accepted into another university. But after I started to get cold feet, the thought of another, 3-year chunk of life and all the exams. And so I thought, well, maybe as an interim, I'll launch a company, because I was already building pedals and recording equipment. And I thought, I'll see if that scratches the itch. And it did. It ended up kind of being such a big project that I felt it meant I could avoid having to study again, because I was basically studying for fun. Just, it's in particular valves or tubes, and it became this massive project that kind of snowballed over the course of the next, it's 17 years on from that point now.
Wow. And was there a particular piece of gear you were trying to emulate, either for recording or for guitar effects? Was there something that was really like the passion project that sort of started the whole operation?
There were a couple of big ones. One was that my main amp for years was a blues breaker, a Marshall blues breaker, which I loved. But increasingly over time, gigs I found, or stage volumes in particular, were getting quieter. And it was so difficult to get that amp to come to life when you turned it down quiet. And it was powerful. And so I was always looking for a pedal that worked with that amp. And I tried everything I could get my hands on, and they all sounded like a pedal. They didn't sound and feel like the amp cranked up. And this is going back a way. Nowadays, there is a plethora of choice, but the King Fuzz was was the second pedal I released. And that really was what drove it forwards, was this desire to get the sound of that amp without the amp, essentially, the sound of it cranked up. And then recording equipment wise, it was all prompted by I worked in a studio with a bunch of friends. We kind of came together and made a little syndicate, I suppose, where we were all playing in lots of bands, and we split the cost because we were paying for so many rehearsal hours. We figured we could rent our own space and make it work that way. So it started as a rehearsal room, but then bit by bit I turned it into a studio. And when I felt like it was my time to move on, I had to sell my mixing console and all the real big stuff. And I wanted something portable, but I didn't want a little digital portable thing. So then I built a Valve studio, basically, an 8-track. So it was a big 8-channel mic preamp, or a transformer input, all Valve. Then it was an ADAT 8-track digital recorder, and then an 8-track stereo all Valve mixer. And then I built more stuff to add to it, like slapback echo and a bit of reverb. I was experimenting with plate reverbs and spring reverbs and EQs, mastering EQs, limiters, compressors. And that then turned into a massive project, but it taught me a lot. And it was great because I felt like I think sometimes portable studios, you feel like you've lost the magic. I love walking into a studio and seeing all the esoteric equipment and knowing that each piece has its own character. And I really didn't want to lose that and go to a digital rig at that point. So yeah, it was a nice project. I think it was about 3 years though, really, to get it up and running. But that was the big one electronically.
You're obviously a tinkerer. Soldering doesn't seem to bother you at all. Are you self-taught, or did your relative teach you? Or like, how did all that come about?
I was self-taught largely. I mean, this is even before YouTube. I'm aging myself a bit there, but my uncle's always been a kind of consultant to me. But no, he never sort of sat down and showed me. It was more via emails and, messages. I would get stumped and then ask him, and he would kind of talk me through it, and trial and error, honestly. A lot of failures. That I think was my learning curve.
I love it. So how big is Bigfoot right now? Is it you, helpers? Like how big is the operation?
Right now, if anything, I've scaled it back a little bit in recent years. It's just me. I pay a company to build the PCBs, and I also pay now someone else to build the enclosures. But there was a time when it almost grew so big, I thought I'd kind of like achieved the dream that I'd set out for. I was building so many pedals, but after a few months, I realized I hadn't picked up a guitar, and it was a horrible moment. It's like, be careful what you wish for. Really, taught me a valuable lesson, because I thought for years the aim of the game was build this company up and up. And then I realized, actually, no, my dream is to play guitar. And if the pedals help support that, not just tonally, but financially, in terms of connections in the industry, all of that. And so I then started to, strip everything back and went from having distributors and dealers to just selling on my own. And because then the profit margin gets bigger, I could sell fewer units. And I got back a bit of the balance at that point. So now it's small compared with a lot of companies, and it is just me. But I feel like in terms of a brand, I've reached a lot of the people who I really hoped, the people I set out to reach, which are working musicians who don't want to compromise on the sound. They're maybe not both feet in with digital. They may be struggling, like I said earlier, to use the big valve amps cranked up, and they want something that they know is reliable, and it's going to sound, it's going to have integrity at the end of the day. So I kind of pitch myself at I would say the middle ground of musicians, and I've kind of ended up with I suppose, middle ground sized company, I guess, but it suits me.
That's great. I mean, now that obviously even before you probably knew, but now that you're selling direct, you must have great analytics on how many people buy these pedals in the UK and Europe versus America. Like, where is your largest audience?
It was Europe, undoubtedly, and then Brexit, it was night and day. It was like someone turned off the tap, you know. So that's been tough economically. America's always been fantastic. And I don't think it's just the Bigfoot thing. I think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be a really long-lasting love, I would say, from Americans towards British music, you know, guitar players, amplifiers. The kind of cultural beginnings were typically transatlantic. We always shared licks, we shared musicians, and, you know, we covered each other's songs. And I think it was natural that we would, you know, we import Fenders and Gibsons and you import Marshalls. And, you know, it's just a lovely thing, I think.
Yeah. You mentioned the Bigfoot thing. Is there a legend of Bigfoot in the UK or Europe?
There is, but no more so than anywhere else. It's probably more well known in the States, I would imagine, because you've got the forest for those stories to really get traction. For me, it was more, I had a funny, when I started the company, at that point, I was just creating all the time. Everything I did was centered around making, you know, inventions and creating music. And I worried that by having a company, it would almost be too formal or too constrained. And I wanted a company that felt like, you know, it lived outside of the grown-up sphere and was still a bit more in where I was, like, I suppose, a childlike state of imagination. Sorry, the sun's just come pouring through on my eyes. But yeah, so Bigfoot basically was born out of this desire for me to have something which I felt like I could do anything under that umbrella. And also the word engineering is so broad. I thought, yeah, that's going to be, I'll never feel stifled by the company name or the company sort of paperwork side of things. And it will be able to grow with whatever ideas I have. And it's kind of worked out to some degree.
Mm-hmm. How does it work when, you know, you've been doing this company for almost 2 decades, but maybe for the last decade, if I'm reading between the lines, you've been really obsessed with acoustic music. Is that, do you have to put your electric hat on every once in a while and go like, I'm going to do some real R&D right now and try to figure out the next product because all I've been doing is playing acoustic for the last week?
It's a really good question. And actually, again, like with Milk Carton Kids, I do have you to thank in a funny way for helping me navigate it, because a lot of the players you've introduced me to share acoustic and electric, and they do it in a way that's very sympathetic and I think very understanding that they are two worlds. And in particular, Julian Large is someone I discovered through you and through the Fretboard Journal. And especially when he was developing the Collings guitar, the arch top spruce, the one that's sort of Gretsch inspired, that really helped me to think, I don't have to treat these necessarily as different worlds. I can let one inform the other. And I actually commissioned a guitar around about the time Julian was doing his Collings. I'll grab it now. Which was made by a guy in Wales. It's a bit hard to see on here.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a Telecaster, but it's a spruce top.
Yeah. Hollow? Yeah?
It is, yeah, but no F-holes. And it's mahogany back. It's made by this guy, Rob Williams.
Okay.
And I wanted one pickup. I know Julian Large often lives on the neck pickup, and I think in my head, when I built this, when I'm playing acoustic, I love the fact that I never have to think about tone controls or pickup selectors, and I just dictate the tone. And I thought it'd be lovely to have a guitar where I can't change pickups. And my thinking was, I love single cut guitars like Les Paul Juniors, but you struggle to get that much low end off the bridge pickup. So I thought if I only have a neck pickup, I think it's easier to get lots of brightness. So it looks like a P90, but it's a Strat pickup in there with it's a low wound pickup, and it's got weak magnets. So it's bright and there's no tone pot. and it's quite a big volume pot. And all of that adds up to a lot of treble. And so when I'm playing this in particular, it doesn't feel a million miles off playing an acoustic, because all I'm relying on is where my right hand is, how hard I'm picking the strings. And even the bridge on this as well, it's like it's a chopped down telly bridge, but it's solid brass and the saddles are solid brass. And the way that transfers the strings into the body, if I play it unplugged, it also feels quite acoustic-like. So all of that combined really helped me make the transition and to stop necessarily feeling like they're two separate worlds.
Yeah. How I'm not familiar with that maker. Is this highly unusual for him to make? I mean, I'm imagining, someone like you who's kind of like constantly thinking about sound and tone might be a luthier's best friend or worst enemy, depending on how high maintenance you want to be. But
that's how I felt, funnily enough. You've hit the nail on the head. I kept saying to him, I'm so sorry for being that guy. But I don't know, maybe he was just flattering me, but he said he actually prefers someone who knows exactly what they want to someone who's less sure. He said it makes his life easier. But I don't know if you've heard of Patrick Eggle, the luthier.
Yeah.
So Rob Williams, for a long time, was his technical director, his kind of right-hand man.
Okay.
And when Patrick started narrowing down his business plan and offering fewer models and upping production, Rob left and kind of went the other way. He wanted to make more one-offs, which is part of the reason I approached him, because I knew I had a lot of unusual requests and that he wasn't going to shy away from it because he had a formula of his own. And he was fantastic to work with. I'd highly recommend him if you have a project in mind that you can't quite see how it fits into any other brand or luthier that you've come across. But yeah, he made the process a real pleasure, I have to admit.
I love it. Sounds fascinating. So when you think about Bigfoot Engineering and putting that electric guitar hat on, do you try to think of like a product a year or some new release a year? Like, do you give yourself any parameters like that, or not really?
Not for me personally. I get why it makes a lot of sense. I found that, the press and the trade shows, it does make a lot of sense to have, even if you come up with lots of ideas, it does make sense to stagger their release. But personally, I design things as and when I need them personally, and then kind of hope that other people will like and need the same products, which is not great for business at all. But it is, you can't really change how you're built, I suppose, at the end of the day. So every pedal I've made has come up at a time in my life where I've needed to tick a certain box. And consequently, it hasn't necessarily fitted in that well with the rest of what the industry is doing, especially with these annual, events.
Sure.
But it doesn't really bother me, if I'm totally honest. I've done trade shows, I've exhibited at them, and I've also gone as visitors. And I do enjoy them, but I wouldn't want to feel every year like I needed to do them or I needed to have something to say, because I feel like I would be bringing things out that didn't feel right in order to fit that.
Sure. Yeah, they are. It's very easy to get on that cycle, and then you can't get off, or you kind of give yourself a self-imposed, I'm going to do this every year and come up with X number of releases, and it's tough. Let's talk about the acoustic guitar record, because none of what we've spoken about in the last half hour will give any listener an indication of what you are releasing onto the world. We just talked about an electric guitar. I'm not familiar. JKM fan fret acoustic. Who is that?
Yeah. So it's Jacob Minea. He goes by Jake. He's in County Down, Northern Ireland. I met him at it's the biggest one we have in the UK, but it's small by US standards. A trade show we have here. I think it's now called the UK guitar show or something like that. I met him just by chance, and he had this instrument hanging up, which had a greenish hue, and it was huge. And I couldn't figure out what the timbres were, what the scale length was. I had only ever played one or two fan fret guitars by that point, so that looked, foreign to me or alien to me. Everything about it was just like out of my wheelhouse, and so I was so curious to pick it up and play it. And he was such a lovely bloke. He does a lot of work teaching people luthiery, which I think is great. That really appeals to me as well. And he's pushing himself all the time. A bit like I was saying with Rob Williams, he's not too set on, these are the models I make, I don't want to touch anything else. He likes trying new things, and that experimentation led ultimately to me creating this very unusual guitar. And while I was playing it, I was playing through some of the songs I had been writing over the last few years, and they sounded so different to how I'd heard them before. And so, I think maybe a year and a half passed before I finally plucked up the courage to say to him, look, I would love to play it again. I can't afford to buy it, but how about, we figure something out where I can borrow it to record some songs. I've got an idea for an album. And he was brilliant. A week later, it arrived at my house, and I was so grateful. And I had it as long as I needed. And it's a really, really interesting sound, because for its size, you'd expect it, especially being a baritone, you'd expect it to be so deep. But it's actually got a real mid-range quality to it. It's almost like bordering on a kind of resonator, almost kind of the mid-range is very forward-facing, which is perfect for me, at least, for baritone tuning, where you worry it could get lost. It really kept all those harmonies so detailed that it overcame the kind of deep resonances of being a baritone.
Was this your first exposure to playing, I guess, both a fan fret and a baritone? Or did you already have your sights on those?
I had played baritones before, but they'd always sounded just like a lower tuned guitar. This one felt like I was playing a different instrument. So I had played a baritone years before that was spruce mahogany, like a dreadnought shape. And it was lovely, but it was kind of unremarkable. It just felt like you tuned it down to dadgad or something, and then gone a little lower. Whereas, the one, and fan fret wise, I had played a couple before, but nothing with this, on this, scale length. So, but I was pleasantly surprised. If anyone hasn't played a fan fret guitar out there, you'd be amazed at how quickly you get used to it. And it really isn't half as odd feeling as it is looking.
Do you feel like with your thumb injury, the fan fret made playing a little easier, or didn't make a difference?
The scale length isn't such a big deal for me as the string spacing. I used to have my thumb over the top of the fingerboard, like, the Hendrixian kind of thing. But since I don't do that, I'm really up on the tips of my fingers. And so the wider the string spacing, the better. Even classic, as close as I can get to classical string spacing helps. And because baritones have such wide strings, the luthiers tend naturally to cut the nuts a lot wider, give them more space. And so in that respect, it definitely helped.
Yeah. So I got a little sneak preview of this record, and with it came a few sentences on each of these compositions. And the record, for anyone listening, I mean, it almost sounds like a classic, like, obviously you care about recording and engineering. It sounds like a classic, like ECM records, like it's very atmospheric and there's air, but beautiful. The guitar sounds beautiful. Your playing is incredible. But those sentences, about each track, it almost documents your family history, the stuff you've been through. At what point between getting that guitar and borrowing it, did you decide, okay, here is a suite of songs or compositions that are going to kind of document my life up till now?
It kind of came about partly from making set lists. I had almost always opened with that particular opening song whenever I play live. I feel like it draws people in because it's very sparse. Beyond that, it kind of fell together in the recording process, really. I recorded a lot more songs than made the album. But then some of them felt like they were going to nicely into the next. Some of them weren't right for that guitar. Maybe it was an intonation issue, maybe it was too much sustain or not enough, or too many overtones in a certain harmonic register, and it wasn't right for the song. As far as the narrative, I think, came together musically first, and then upon reflection, I realized, this actually is quite a nice way of telling the story, for example, of my granddad's kind of life as well.
Yeah, and these compositions, have they been with you for a while? You mentioned that you kind of honed the sequencing in your sets. So you've obviously, some of these you've had for a while.
Yeah, I started recording these after my thumb. So I think it was 2 years maybe after the injury. I wrote one song, and because I was playing one note at a time, they were so different to anything I'd ever done before. And equally, I couldn't play anything I'd ever written before. So, yeah, I don't know how many years it's been exactly, but it's probably 5 years or so. I've been accumulating these songs, maybe 30 or more by now. And each one, initially, I felt like each one was kind of like a diary entry, which is why it felt quite easy to put together the story for each song. But as time's gone on, and I've listened to more people, again, thanks to you, like Bill Frisell or Nels Klein, these kinds of people, I've started to feel a bit more abstract and like there isn't such a strict interpretation. So I kind of got lucky that the way the songs that fell into place on that album, there almost was a written narrative behind them. Whereas I think the songs that I'm kind of working on these days are a little bit more ambiguous.
Yeah. The album title, I don't want to screw it up. How do I pronounce that?
Zems.
Okay, I would have gotten that.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I chose it. I thought this is hopefully quite a universal.
And what does that mean?
Low.
Low. Okay.
So it's a nod to the baritone. Obviously, it's a little nod to Bowie as well. But yeah, I like it as a word. Latvian has the letter Z all over it, but they write it with a sort of slash halfway down, like you would with a 7. And so, yeah, even just on a page, I like the way that looked. So, yeah, not too much deep thought behind that, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and in your descriptions of the compositions that you mentioned just now, Latvian, you have Latvian in your heritage, in your background. Forgive me for not knowing, but did Latvian music play a role in your music upbringing?
Very little, actually. Okay. Mostly choral music, like they call it the singing nation. And over here, Wales is very similar, actually. The big festivals over there in the summer are like the opera festival, which I love, even though I don't claim to know anything about opera. Here, Nessun Dorma in front of you in real life is going to move anyone. But in terms of their kind of folk music, it hasn't inspired me as much probably as like Irish folk music, for example, because I suppose the instrumentation is just so different. I would say Latvian folk music right now sits closer to Baroque in terms of it's softer. They've got those kind of woodwinds. Their stringed instruments are very soft. They're more like a dulcimer, those kinds of instruments, or like a lute or a harp, whereas I lean more towards the percussive, I'm trying to think of a better description, but Irish music's probably the closest thing to in terms of traditional music. So for example, with Julian Lage, when I hear him playing with, Chris Eldridge, which is yet another one that I found through you. Or who else have you got? The mandolinist whose name I've suddenly forgotten.
Chris Thiele, or
yes, that's
been
it.
several, yeah.
So when I play guitar, although I can't play anywhere near that well or that fast, I like the snap in the tone, and I like the kind of embracing overtones. And in Latvian music, it's a little more perhaps drone oriented and a little softer overall in the way it's played.
Got it. And have you had to give back the baritone, the fanfret already?
I have, yeah.
So how does that affect you? Presumably you want to play some live shows, perhaps, an album release party or something. I don't know. But is this a bit of a transition while you try to figure out what guitar will work for this?
Luckily, I'll show you my main Mr. Atkin in the UK.
Okay, yep.
He normally makes Gibson and Martin style guitars, but this one is one of his earlier ones. I'll try and get it in shot.
Oh, yeah. It looks like a Loudon or a File or something, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He calls it a small jumbo, but it's Cocobolo, and it's a deep body. So this is only tuned to standard, but it sounds big. It's got a real depth. And so, fortunately, like I was saying earlier about the baritone, it wasn't overwhelmingly resonant in the lows. It was actually quite well focused and tight. And so I think I can kind of close enough approximate those sounds with this guitar. So playing live, this is louder. This is spruce as well, and the baritone was cedar. So it worked brilliantly in the studio, but I think this will be probably the better choice live anyway, this one.
Yeah. How much fun did you have in the studio trying to dial in recording an acoustic guitar? Because obviously your whole career has been you trying to dial in tones that you were seeking. Did you get to really nerd out and deal with, microphones and microphone placement and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Michael Watts, who I know is another contributor and friend of yours, he's a great resource. And for anyone looking to get into acoustic recording, I would recommend checking out his channel. I mean, again, trial and error, really. And I would say that for me, there's two real steep learning curves with mixing and recording acoustic guitars. The first one is mixing really, really quietly, because there's such a dynamic range on acoustic, you can accidentally let things end up being too spiky in the finished result, almost too dramatic. And then the second thing that really helped me was mixing quiet, but then listening back very loud, because that's where you hear, there's a strange resonance. Maybe the mic was too close to the guitar. Maybe I was too close to the corner of the room. Or maybe I shouldn't have been plucking quite so hard on that string on that particular fret. It's definitely more idiosyncratic and less amiable, let's say, than the electric guitar is easily flattering because it's compressing itself all the time. And you can't go too far wrong, I don't think, because maybe if you're using a big 412 and a 100-watt head, you might get some uncontrollable resonances. But if you're using an open back, tube amp, 5 watts, 15 watts, even 30 watts, I think it's hard to mess it up particularly. But with acoustic guitar, every inch of the microphone and the angle, it makes such a difference. So really trial and error. And I'd recorded a lot of these songs previously before the album, which helped as well. So by the time it came to doing the album, I'd made already a lot of the mistakes that I avoided them luckily by then.
I hearing you talk about this, I don't know. Has Bigfoot Engineering explored creating products for the acoustic market?
I would love to. And in another life, I would even like to try my hand at luthiery, but I think I've got too much going on and I'm too old to start now. Maybe, but only if there was a product that I needed, then I would pursue it. Or if enough people came to me and there was a product that they needed, I would pursue it. But the need has to come before the product for me personally.
So the new record is Zems. Is it just digital? Is it going to be on any other formats?
It's digital for now. Mm-hmm. I am looking at print on demand, vinyl and CD actually, which I didn't even know was a thing until now.
I didn't know until you just told me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? So it's possible. And again, if people ask for it, then I'll try my best to do it. But I didn't want to do it gratuitously just for me and for, like a selfie with my new record. But yeah, we'll see.
And are you doing a concert around this or concerts?
No, I haven't booked anything in yet, but I would like to. The one of the last concerts I did was a place called Hay on Wye near us, which is like the book capital of the world. And they have this thing called the Hay Festival. And I was lucky enough to play there for the BBC. And that was brilliant because they do have music there, but it's mostly public speaking, a lot of poets and writers. And so they wanted me to play the songs and talk about the songs in between, much like the little bio that you had read for the album. And that was cool. I'd never kind of thought about doing that live in that way before. So maybe I'll think about, taking that idea on the road.
What makes it the book capital of the world?
The number of bookshops in it, I think, was where it started from. It's unbelievable. Almost every single shop there is a bookshop.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Okay. It's a weird place, but this festival's massive. It's like as iconic as Glastonbury, but it's like a literary festival basically.
Wow.
It's really weird.
Idea. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool though.
Well, the record is so, I was so surprised and you probably told a bunch of people about this record. I didn't know there was any even tangential Fretboard Journal connection or that we at all inspired you. So thank you. You made my day.
Oh, thank you.
What's next for Bigfoot Engineering?
In terms of new products, I don't have anything that I can kind of give you a spoiler for at the moment.
Okay.
One thing I do love, and I know all of us guitarists love, are the more collectible things. I was doing a lot of limited edition pedals where I was going back to spraying with nitrocellulose and, using interesting shaped enclosures. And I used to build my own enclosures out of steel and engrave them. So I'd like to do a few more of the limited edition things for sure.
I love it. Sounds great. Well, and it sounds like we need to, when travel allows, get you to our Fretboard Summit because you'll see around all these people who you've watched in videos over the years.
Yeah, I would be so starstruck.
It's so cool. Well, I'll include a link to the album for everybody to check out, as well as to Bigfoot Engineering. And what a surprise! I'm so. The album is so good. I really love it. I think a lot of folks listening to this will too.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Thank you, and thank you honestly for everything you've done. Because your journey. I was watching recently a podcast you did, celebrating your 20th anniversary, and hearing about your whole journey through, creating the summit, creating the magazine, the podcasts. And I have learned more through the Fretboard, not just learned more as well, discovered more musicians I love and builders I love through that than I honestly have through all the other publications put together. And it is a testament to you, honestly, and your passion for it. It just shines through.
Aw, thank you. You've made my day.
Oh, you're very welcome.
When I come to the UK, I'll buy you a pint.
Thank you.
All right, that was Rhys from Bigfoot Engineering again. The album is called Zems, Z-E-M-S. You can find it on all the streaming platforms as of today. Go check it out. Tell me what you think, podcast@fretboardjournal.com. And thanks as always for tuning in to the Fretboard Journal podcast.